Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm John Tucker.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, we begin overseas, where traders are following the political landscape in France. Citigroup strategists downgraded the region to neutral from overweight, citing risks of extreme parties gaining ground in the upcoming parliamentary elections. And Bloomberg's Ewan Potts joins us for the latest on what's happening in Europe. Ewan, good morning.
John and Karen, European stocks fairly flat this morning after investors flocked to haven assets at the end of last week. Political volatility in France very much in focus, with latest polls putting President Emmanuel Macron's party in third place ahead of upcoming elections to the French Parliament. The party of far-right leader Marine Le Pen currently has a polling lead, with a left-wing coalition in second place. They presented plans to pick apart most of Macron's 7 years of economic reforms and set France on a collision course with the European Union over fiscal policy. The first round of voting takes place in just under 2 weeks' time. In London, I'm Ewan Potts, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ewan, thanks. And the political upheaval in France has led Paris to lose its title as Europe's largest equity market. Billions of dollars were wiped off the market cap of French firms after Emmanuel Macron called the surprise snap election. Stocks in the country are now collectively worth about $3.13 trillion, narrowly behind London's $3.18 trillion. The CAC 40 index has erased all its gains for 2024.
And meanwhile, in the UK, Rishi Sunak's Conservatives headed for a wipeout in the July 4th general election. At least that's according to new polling data. Survation survey sees the Tories getting only 72 seats, which would be their worst election performance in 2 centuries. One of the reasons for their slide in the polls has been the emergence of the right-wing Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, the party launching its manifesto today.
Well, John, as the political turmoil continues in Europe, new data show the U.S. mopped up almost 1/3 of all the global investment flow since COVID. Analysis by the International Monetary Fund shows that the U.S.'s share of financial flows has climbed, with higher interest rates a major draw for overseas investors. The pre-pandemic U.S. average share was just 18%. The U.S. also pulled in a fresh wave of foreign direct investment. However, Fed rate policy and the presidential election could affect the fiscal deficit.
And Karen, to markets now, traders are going to be digesting a lot of Fed speak this week following last week's CPI reading and Fed decision. We're going to hear from the New York Fed President John Williams today, as well as Patrick Harker of Philadelphia and Fed Governor Lisa Cook. Later this week, we'll hear from the Dallas Fed President Lori Logan and the Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee. Over the weekend, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari said on CBS's Face the Nation that rate cuts are still a ways away.
We're in a very good position right now to take our time, get more inflation data, get more data on the economy, on the labor market, before we have to make any decisions. So we're in a strong position. But if you just said there's going to be one cut, which is what the median indicated, that would likely be toward the end of the year.
Well, John, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari's comments were echoed by Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester, who spoke with our Michael McKee. Mester says monetary policy is well positioned to ensure that inflation moves back down to 2% over time.
It's going to take some time to get inflation back to 2% all the way back. So my projection is that we probably won't get there until 2026, but we'll see progress continue in my modal view. And that's enough, right, to then say, okay, it's time to start the process of bringing rates down.
Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester says the central bank is in a comfortable position to address inflation if data comes in hotter than expected, or to address any potential disinflationary trends that emerge.
And moving to politics now, with the November presidential election approaching, the ranks of double hater voters have hit an all-time high. This according to new analysis from Pew Research. Double haters make up 1/4 of the electorate. That's nearly twice as many as at this point in 2020. Double haters are disaffected voters who say they don't like either major party presidential candidate. Biden and Trump are taking roughly equal measures of these voters in battleground states, with a May Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll showing President Biden winning 25% to Trump's 22%.
Well, John, as Donald Trump looks to return to the White House, he's proposing a new idea of using tariff hikes as a way to pay for some income tax cuts. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers blasted Trump's plan, saying it'd be damaging to both the U.S. and the global economy. Summers tells Bloomberg that Trump's plan to use tariffs in his way is a, quote, prescription for the mother of all stagflations.
Look, I don't think there's been a more inflationary presidential economic policy platform in my lifetime.
And asked about Larry Summers' criticisms, a Trump campaign spokesperson said, quote, Americans can expect President Trump's second-term economic agenda will end Joe Biden's inflation crisis that continues to rob working families of thousands of dollars every month.
Oil slipped following mixed economic data out of China, and the pullback in oil came as the Biden administration reportedly is ready to reopen the U.S. stockpile if prices jump in the summer months ahead. Amos Hochstein, the President Biden's closest advisor on energy, telling the Financial Times the administration will do everything it can to make sure the market is supplied well enough to ensure low prices as possible for American consumers, which includes releasing more oil from the strategic petroleum reserves. He says he believes there's enough oil in the stockpile if it becomes necessary to draw from the reserves.
Well, elsewhere on the energy front here, John, Bill Gates said he's prepared to throw billions of dollars into a next-generation nuclear power plant project in Wyoming to meet growing U.S. electricity needs. The billionaire tells CBS's Face the Nation that his energy startup TerraPower relies on sodium cooling rather than water, which is believed to both simplify the process while also being safer and can make nuclear energy a source of low-cost electricity.
You know, the two big backers of this project are the TerraPower investors, of which I'm the largest. I put in over $1 billion, and I'll put in billions more. And then the federal government, who is helping because of the strategic benefits of having energy security. And so we're not asking any of the utility customers to take any risk and have to pay high electricity prices. All of that risk is on TerraPower and the U.S. government.
Bill Gates adds that TerraPower's plant is on track to start producing power by 2030.
And here it comes, the season's first heat wave set to hit the East Coast this week. Excessive heat watches have been posted from Michigan to New Hampshire. Manhattan is set to reach 91 degrees tomorrow as steadily get hotter throughout the week. Electric grids and wholesale prices will be stressed as demand rises with the temperatures, which could slow trains, tie up freight and passenger traffic, and could also lead to increased heat illnesses.
And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. For that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The Israeli military says it is pausing fighting during daytime hours along a route in southern Gaza to free up a backlog of humanitarian aid deliveries for desperate Palestinians. It should allow aid trucks to reach the Israel-controlled Kerem Shalom crossing and travel safely to a highway to deliver supplies to other parts of Gaza. The United Nations says it welcomes the move, but adds that so far no aid has left Kerem Shalom. A peace conference to end the war in Ukraine wrapped up Sunday with 80 countries jointly calling for any peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says peace won't be achieved in a single step.
I call on Russia to heed the message of the international community, respect the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine, put an end to imperialist violence, and bring back the children.
Russia was not invited to the conference in Switzerland. Several mass shootings took place in the U.S. over the weekend in the Detroit suburb of Rochester Hills, Michigan. A vigil took place for 9 people who were wounded at a splash pad. The victims, including 2 children and a pregnant woman. Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett spoke at the vigil.
Thank you for being for caring enough to be here today. And if there's anything that the city can do, we stand ready to do it. We're we're stunned and hurt as well, but we know that we have a role to play, and we want to do it as best we can.
The gunman was found dead in his home from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. In Texas, 2 people were killed and several others injured during a Juneteenth celebration over the weekend in Round Rock. Police say shots were fired during a fight near a concert stage. And in Methuen, Massachusetts, officials say 7 people were shot after a pop-up party organized over social media erupted in gunfire. A week and a half before the first presidential debate, former President Donald Trump meets today with the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, at Trump's resort in Mar-a-Lago. Congressional Republicans are looking at how to hold on to the slim majority they have in the House. The Outsiders, based on the novel of the same name by Susan Eloise Hinton, won the Tony Award for Best Musical. Producer Matthew Rego thanked the author for sharing her story.
Well, Susie, I'm here to tell you that your story and its eternal message of love and family and staying gold has forever changed all of our lives. We love you. Thank you.
Stereophonic took home Best Play and Appropriate Best Play Revival. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Karen.
Yeah, stay gold, Michael Barr. Thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. The 124th U.S. Open came down to Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy. Down the stretch, at times tied. Both held leads on the back nine. McIlroy, who began the day 3 shots behind, led by 2 with 5 holes to play and then had a nightmare finish. 3 bogeys on 16 and 18. He missed a par putt of no more than 4 feet. DeChambeau took advantage. A tremendous save for par on the last hole gave him the one-shot victory in the second Open title. On 18, his tee shot landed near a tree. His second shot in a bunker well away from the green, but his sand shot got him within 4 feet of the hole.
1000th USGA championship. I mean, just stack them on top. That bunker shot was the shot of my life. And I'll forever be thankful that I've got longer wedges.
DeChambeau referenced the total number of USGA events that have been played. Heartbreak for McIlroy, who's gone a decade without winning a major. 11 times since then. He's finished in the top 5. This was his 4th second-place finish. Yankees, quick start in Boston. Aaron Judge home run in the first inning. This 26th, with the Red Sox won 9-3 and won the series. Boston pulled away after the Yanks down 4-3 in the 7th. Had the bases loaded, no one out, and didn't score. Mets with a Citi Field sweep of the Padres, winning 11-6. Mets have won 5 in a row, 9 of the last 11. Rough weekend for the Dodgers. They lost Yoshinobu Yamamoto to a strained rotator cuff, and then Mookie Betts got hit with a pitch, broke his hand. They did win yesterday as Shohei Ohtani homered twice. Celtics tonight with a second chance to win the NBA championship, this time at home. They lead Dallas 3-1. Another Caitlin Clark incident in a WNBA game against the Chicago Sky. This time it was fellow rookie Angel Reese who hit Clark in the head. Fever won the game. Clark scored 23 points, had 8 rebounds, 9 assists. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Karen?
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And U.S. futures right now indicate a mixed open on Wall Street this morning. No shortage of events for investors to latch onto as we start the new week. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, I'm John Tucker along with Karen Moscow. We have escalating concern about political volatility in France. We had Fed to speak over the weekend. Neil Kashkari saying the central bank can take its time before cutting rates. Well, let's get you set up for the trading day ahead. We're joined now by Bloomberg's Kriti Gupta, host of Markets Today in the UK. Pleasure to talk to you again, Kriti. Politics do matter for markets. In fact, France's stock market now falling behind the UK. Do I have that right?
You do, and this is, remember, something that they kind of overtook about 2 years ago, and this latest drop behind the UK's market cap is coming off of course, the electoral volatility that you were talking about a 5% correction that you saw in the stock market. We'll call that a mini correction, if you will, for the equities. They're seeing a little bit of a rebound today, but what you need to know over the weekend is not only is there this risk from the far right to Emmanuel Macron, a revamp perhaps of what we saw in in 2017 from Marine Le Pen. Now he's dealing with it from the left too. And this is significant when we're talking about policies that impact the markets, because this is a group that is not only now that he has to contend with for the snap legislative elections, but wants to reverse government pension reform, reinstate the right to retire at just 60. And this is a really big deal. A lot of French are very passionate about it. It's led to a lot of protests on the streets, big trash bags, for example, across Paris as a sign of protest for a lot of the people, include a lot of the people who are protesting Emmanuel Macron increasing the potential retirement age to 63, even 64, in a way to kind of control the country's finances. Marine Le Pen on the far right, on the other hand, then talking about perhaps unleashing the spending caps. These are the concerns that the markets are worried about when it comes to what policies might be shaping France in the next couple of weeks.
Let's move on to the U.S. We've got the Fed, and we've gotten more hawkish despite some of the data that we've seen. Give us an idea of what's on this front, because it's a very delicate balancing act for the Federal Reserve at this point. You don't want inflation to rise any further. At the same time, you don't want to trash the economy.
You definitely don't. And I think this is where you put your Jay Powell thinking cap and say, look, you're data dependent, right? And I hate to use that word because it's so frustrating, but here's really where you need to keep in mind is what the data told us last week. You had CPI data that was perhaps welcomed by the Fed, PPI numbers that were, again, welcomed by the Fed, showing that disinflationary path is continuing. But then on Friday, those consumer sentiment numbers hitting a 7-month low and really crashing even to 2009 lows in certain parts of the market. Now, this is concerning because if the economic data is showing that inflation is coming down and you have job growth that is still picking up and still growing, why is consumer sentiment so low, and how does that affect spending ability, especially ahead of the election? That really changed a little bit of the market pricing, whereas the Fed said, look, there could be one cut this year, maybe even two. The markets are saying, well, actually, this could be more and more of a 2025 problem. And remember, the Fed is going to likely be on the sidelines as we get closer to the election. At least that's the assumption from Global Wall Street right now.
You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, Sirius XM Channel 119, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm John Tucker on Tucker.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.